Hey everyone, Sophia here. Welcome to Revenge Shift, where the best stories come to life. Hit subscribe for your daily dose. The crystal chandeliers of the Bellingham Grand Ballroom cast prismatic light across 500 guests in evening wear. I stood near the bar, champagne flute balanced between my fingers, watching my husband Marcus command the stage with the easy confidence of someone born into wealth. The 15-year anniversary gala for Thornton Dynamics had cost close to $2 million to orchestrate. Every detail was perfect. From the ice sculptures to the 12-piece orchestra to the gold leaf program I'd helped design 3 months ago. And I want to thank everyone who has made Thornton Dynamics the industry leader it is today. Marcus said, his voice carrying across the ballroom with practiced authority. His tuxedo was custom Brioni, his cufflinks platinum, his smile the one he reserved for board meetings and shareholder calls. Especially our executive team, whose dedication and strategic vision continue to drive our success. I'd heard versions of this speech a dozen times over our 8 years of marriage. I knew when to smile, when to applaud, when to look appropriately humble if he mentioned me. Tonight, standing in a midnight blue gown I'd deselected specifically because Marcus said it made me look appropriately elegant. I waited for my cue. It didn't come. However, Marcus continued, his expression shifting to something more serious. Leadership requires making difficult decisions for the good of the company. Tonight, I want to address one of those decisions with complete transparency. Something cold settled in my stomach. Around me, conversations began to quiet. I saw Sarah Mendoza, our chief operating officer, turn toward the stage with a frown. Tom Patterson from legal set down his drink, his attention sharpening. As many of you know, my wife Claire has been serving as our director of strategic partnerships for the past 6 years. Marcus gestured vaguely in my direction, and suddenly every eye in the ballroom found me. Heat crept up my neck. She's worked very hard in that role. Very dedicated. But the reality is that our company has grown beyond what we initially envisioned, and the complexity of our current strategic landscape requires a different level of expertise. I felt my champagne flute grow slippery in my palm. After careful consideration and consultation with our board, Marcus said, his tone taking on a patronizing gentleness that made my teeth clench. Effective immediately, Claire is stepping down from her position. She's simply overwhelmed by the complexity of her role, and we believe this is the best decision for both her well-being and the company's continued growth. The ballroom went absolutely silent. 500 people stopped breathing at once. I stood frozen, champagne still in hand, as my husband publicly fired me at our company's anniversary celebration. In front of our entire executive team. In front of our clients. In front of the board of directors, including his father, Chairman Richard Thornton, who sat at the head table looking carefully neutral. We're grateful for her contributions, Marcus continued, as if I were already gone, and we wish her well in her future endeavors. Now let's raise our glasses to 15 years of innovation and excellence. The orchestra conductor, bless him, looked utterly confused about whether to start the music. People began to slowly, reluctantly lift their glasses, but the gesture felt hollow, uncertain. I set my champagne down on the bar with a soft click that somehow carried in the stunned silence. Then I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a strained smile, but a genuinely calm, knowing smile that reached my eyes. Thank you for the clarity, Marcus, I said, my voice clear and steady, carrying just far enough to reach the tables nearest to me. Then I picked up my clutch, adjusted the strap of my gown, and walked toward the exit with my head held perfectly high. My heels clicked across the marble floor in a measured rhythm. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard the confused murmur of 500 voices trying to process what they'd just witnessed. But I kept my eyes forward, my shoulders back, my expression serene. The valet brought my car around, the Audi A6 I'd bought myself, not the Mercedes Marcus had given me for my birthday, and I drove home to the brownstone we'd shared in the city. 30 minutes later, I was changing out of my gown, carefully hanging it in the closet one last time. I'd pulled on jeans and a sweater, packed a single overnight bag, and left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to a note that said simply, "I'll have my attorney contact yours." Then I drove to the apartment I'd been secretly leasing for 3 months on the other side of the city. The one-bedroom was modest, furnished with items I'd been slowly acquiring from estate sales and secondhand stores. No one knew about it, not Marcus, not his father. Not even Sarah, who was the closest thing I had to a friend at Thornton Dynamics. I made myself tea, sat on my new couch, and pulled out the laptop I'd been using for my other project, the one Marcus knew nothing about. The screen glowed in the darkness as I opened the encrypted folder marked Documentation. Inside were 6 months of carefully compiled evidence. Voice recordings, emails, financial documents, time-stamped photographs, witness statements. Everything I'd been methodically gathering since the day I accidentally discovered the truth about what my husband was really doing at Thornton Dynamics. It had started small, innocuously. 6 months ago, I'd been working late, reviewing contracts for a potential partnership with Meridian Tech. I'd needed Marcus' signature on some documents and had gone to his office after everyone else had left. His computer was unlocked, email open, and I'd seen a message that made no sense in context, something about offshore transfers completed and Shell account active. I should have asked him about it. In a healthy marriage, that's what you do. But something in my gut told me to stay quiet. So instead, I'd started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed how Marcus would take calls in his car instead of his office. How certain files were never on the shared server, only his personal laptop. How he changed the passwords to his accounts and insisted on filing our taxes separately for liability protection. How his assistant Jennifer would become nervous whenever I asked about certain meetings. So I'd done what any director of strategic partnerships would do when investigating a potential business risk. I'd begun documenting everything systematically. I'd purchased a voice-activated recorder and planted it in Marcus' office, technically legal since I was still an executive with access to all company spaces. I'd made copies of documents left carelessly on his desk. I'd tracked meeting schedules and cross-referenced them with company calendar entries. I'd noticed patterns. And 3 months ago, I'd done something that would have seemed paranoid if it hadn't proven absolutely necessary. I'd hired a private investigator and a forensic accountant. The private investigator, a woman named Patricia Chen, had 20 years of experience with corporate fraud cases. The forensic accountant, David Silverman, had previously worked for the SEC. Together, they'd help me understand exactly what I was looking at. Marcus was embezzling. Not small amounts, but systematic, sophisticated fraud totaling over $70 million across the past 4 years. He'd created shell companies, falsified vendor contracts, and routed company funds through a complex network of offshore accounts. And the brilliant, damning detail, he'd forged my signature on dozens of documents, setting me up as the potential scapegoat if anyone ever investigated. My name was on shell company registrations I'd never seen. My signature authorized transfers I'd never approved. If federal investigators ever came calling, every piece of evidence pointed directly to me as the architect of the scheme. I'd spent 3 months having panic attacks in bathroom stalls, 3 months planning my exit strategy while pretending everything was fine, 3 months preparing for the exact moment Marcus would try to remove me from the company. I just hadn't expected him to do it quite so publicly. Now, sitting in my secret apartment with my evidence files open, I allowed myself one small, satisfied smile. Because Marcus had just made a critical mistake. He'd humiliated me in front of everyone who mattered, which meant when I acted, they would understand exactly why. I opened a new document and began typing an email to Patricia Chen. He moved faster than we expected. Proceed with phase 2 tomorrow morning. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, toasted the empty apartment, and went to bed. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn clarity that makes everything feel sharper, more focused. I woke at 6, made coffee, and dressed in a charcoal gray suit that Marcus had once said made me look too severe, perfect. By 7:30, I was sitting in the glass-walled conference room of Patterson and Associates, the law firm I'd retained 2 months ago. My attorney, Elizabeth Patterson, was a 55-year-old former federal prosecutor with a reputation for ruthless competence. She wore her gray hair in a sleek bob and had eyes that missed nothing. "You're certain you want to proceed this way?" Elizabeth asked, sliding a folder across the table. "Once we file, there's no going back." "I'm certain," I said, signing my name at the bottom of the divorce petition. "How long until he's served?" "The process server is waiting outside Thornton Dynamics. He'll deliver the papers at 9 a.m. sharp, in front of as many witnesses as possible." Elizabeth's smile was thin and professional. "Given that your husband chose to fire you publicly, I thought it appropriate to return the favor. Poetic, I agreed. The forensic accounting report will be delivered to the FBI field office at 9:15, Elizabeth continued. David Silverman has prepared a comprehensive brief documenting the embezzlement scheme, complete with evidence of forged signatures and shell companies. Agent Sarah Coleman, no relation to your coup, ironically, is expecting our package. And the civil suit? We're filing for divorce with grounds of fraud and financial malfeasance. We're also filing a separate civil suit against Marcus personally for identity theft and forgery. Your name was used to create multiple fraudulent business entities without your knowledge or consent. Elizabeth paused, meeting my eyes. The settlement demand is $15 million plus 50% of marital assets. Given the evidence, I believe we'll get it. I felt something tight in my chest begin to loosen. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly, Claire. Your husband's family has significant resources and influence. They will fight back. Let them, I said quietly. I have something they don't. What's that? The truth. And 17 very angry executives who are about to realize exactly why I walked out of that gala with my head high. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Care to elaborate? I pulled out my phone and showed her the text messages I'd received throughout the weekend. They'd started Saturday afternoon and hadn't stopped. Sarah Mendoza. Coup. Claire, what the hell just happened? Call me. Tom Patterson. Legal. That was completely inappropriate. Are you okay? Jennifer Wu, CFO. I'm so sorry you had to experience that. We need to talk. Marcus Rivera, CTO. Unacceptable. I'm calling Richard tomorrow. David Kim, VP of Operations. Just spoke with Sarah. 17 of us are meeting Monday at 8 a.m. Please join if you're willing. The messages went on. Expressions of shock, apologies, outrage. Not from everyone. Marcus had his loyalists, particularly among the old guard who'd worked with his father for decades, but from the executive's ID. Personally recruited, mentored, and worked alongside for 6 years. They're meeting this morning at 8, I said. I should be there. Elizabeth checked her watch. Then you'd better go. I'll handle the legal proceedings. You handle the exodus. The coffee shop 3 blocks from Thornton Dynamics was called The Grind, and it was where our executive team often held informal strategy sessions. When I walked in at 7:55 a.m., I found 17 people crammed into the back corner. Coffees in hand, expressions ranging from furious to devastated. Sarah Mendoza saw me first and immediately stood, pulling me into a fierce hug. Claire, Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry. Don't be, I said quietly. He did me a favor. Tom Patterson pulled out a chair for me, and I sat down at the head of the makeshift gathering. Around the table were the executives I'd worked with for years. Sarah, Tom, Jennifer Wu, Marcus Rivera. No relation to my husband, thankfully. David Kim, and 12 others representing every major department at Thornton Dynamics. We spent all weekend talking, Jennifer said, her normally composed expression tight with anger. What Marcus did Friday night was unconscionable. You don't fire someone, especially not a senior executive like that, in public, at a celebration, in front of clients and board members. It was a power play, Tom added. Public humiliation designed to ensure you couldn't fight back without looking bitter or vindictive. He miscalculated, I said simply. Sarah leaned forward. Claire, 17 of us submitted identical resignation letters this morning. They'll be on Richard's desk when he arrives at 9. We're all walking. I felt my breath catch. Sarah, you don't have to. Yes, we do, Marcus Rivera interrupted. His dark eyes were intense behind his glasses. What happened Friday wasn't just about you. It was about how leadership treats people, about respect, about basic human decency. If Marcus thinks he can publicly humiliate someone who he's given 6 years to this company and face no consequences, he's wrong. We've all experienced his behavior, David Kim said quietly. The way he takes credit for other people's ideas. The way he talks down to anyone he considers beneath him. The casual cruelty disguised as direct feedback. You weren't the first person he's treated this way, Claire. You were just the most visible. Jennifer pulled out her tablet and turned it toward me. I've been documenting concerning financial irregularities for 8 months. Unusual transfers, vendor contracts that don't quite make sense, discrepancies in budget reporting. I couldn't figure out the pattern until this weekend, when I really looked at the timeline. My heart began to pound. What did you find? Every major discrepancy corresponds to a period when you were out of the office. Medical leave 2 years ago, your mother's funeral, the 3 weeks you spent in Singapore on that partnership deal. Jennifer's voice dropped. Claire, I think Marcus has been using your absence to cover fraudulent transactions. And I think he fired you Friday because you were getting too close to something he couldn't afford for you to see. I felt the weight of my 6 months of investigation pressing against my chest. These people had noticed the same patterns I had, drawn the same conclusions, and they didn't even have access to the evidence I'd compiled. There's something you all need to know, I said carefully. But before I tell you, I need to be clear. What I am about to share could have serious consequences for all of you. Once you know, you'll have to decide what to do with that information. Sarah's expression sharpened. We're already resigning, Claire. We've already chosen our side. I took a breath and pulled out my phone, accessing the encrypted files. 6 months ago, I discovered evidence that Marcus has been embezzling from Thornton Dynamics. Systematic fraud totaling over $70 million. Shell companies, falsified contracts, offshore accounts. And he has been forging my signature on documents to make it look like I am the one behind it. The silence that followed was absolute. Tom spoke first, his voice tight. You have proof? Voice recordings, financial documents, time-stamped photographs. 6 months of documentation compiled with the help of a private investigator and forensic accountant. I met his eyes. And as of 9:15 this morning, all of that evidence will be in the hands of an FBI agent named Sarah Coleman. Jennifer's hands trembled slightly as she set down her coffee. He was setting you up as the fall guy. Yes, and by firing me publicly Friday night, he thought he was removing me from the company before I could expose him. He assumed I'd slink away quietly, too humiliated to fight back. But instead, you've been preparing for this, Sarah said slowly, understanding dawning. For months. I've been protecting myself, I corrected. And now I'm protecting all of you. Because if Marcus goes down, and he will, the FBI will investigate everyone in leadership. Your resignations create distance. You're no longer employed by Thornton Dynamics when the hammer falls. Marcus Rivera let out a low whistle. That's why you smiled Friday night. You knew exactly what was coming. I knew he was going to force me out eventually. I just didn't expect him to be quite so theatrical about it. I looked around at the 17 faces watching me. You don't have to resign because of what he did to me. But you might want to resign because of what's about to happen to him. We're resigning because we choose to, Sarah said firmly. What happens next is just confirmation that we made the right choice. Tom checked his watch. It's 8:40. If the FBI is moving at 9:15, we should probably not be anywhere near Thornton Dynamics when it happens. Agreed, I said. But there's one more thing. I've been working on something. A contingency plan in case I ever needed to leave Thornton Dynamics quickly. I pulled out a business plan I'd been refining for 3 months and slid it to the center of the table. The cover read, Phoenix Strategic Partners, a new model for corporate partnership development. I've been consulting with venture capitalists. I have preliminary funding commitments totaling $5.5 million. I have office space leased in the warehouse district. And I have a client list of companies who've expressed interest in working with me independently. I paused. I'm starting my own firm. And if any of you want to join me, there's a place for you. Sarah picked up the business plan, flipping through it with wide eyes. Claire, this is incredibly detailed. I've had 6 months to prepare, I said simply. I knew I was leaving one way or another. I just wanted to make sure I had somewhere to land. Jennifer was reading over Sarah's shoulder. You've already negotiated preliminary contracts with Meridian Tech. They're Thornton's largest client. They're my client, I corrected gently. I built that relationship. I negotiated that partnership. And when I told them I was leaving Thornton Dynamics, they asked if they could follow me to wherever I went next. Tom was grinning now. How many clients have you already locked in? Meridian, Cascade Industries, Brighton Systems, and North Point Ventures. Combined annual value of approximately $30 million. I met each person's eyes in turn. I'm not asking you to decide right now. Take some time. But if you want to be part of something new, something built on respect and competence rather than family legacy and ego, the door is open. David Kim raised his coffee cup. To new beginnings. Around the table, 17 executives raised their cups in silent agreement. And at exactly 9 a.m., 17 resignation letters landed on Chairman Richard Thornton's desk like a coordinated attack. I wasn't there to see it happen, but Sarah told me later that Richard Thornton's administrative assistant practically ran to his office when she saw the stack of identical envelopes. Richard had been in early, already fielding angry calls from board members who'd witnessed Marcus's Friday night spectacle. The resignations hit him like a freight train. At 9:02 a.m., Marcus himself was served with divorce papers in his office by a process server who made sure to hand them over while Marcus's assistant and 2 junior executives were present. The papers detailed financial fraud, identity theft, and forgery. By 9:05, the news was spreading through Thornton Dynamics like wildfire. At 9:15 a.m., the FBI agent Sarah Coleman received a comprehensive package from David Silverman documenting systematic embezzlement spanning 4 years. She immediately opened a preliminary investigation. At 9:23 a.m., Richard Thornton called my phone personally. I was back at my apartment, watching the morning unfold through carefully worded text updates from Sarah, when my phone lit up with Richard Thornton, chairman, on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Claire," Richard's voice was strained, lacking its usual commanding authority. "We need to talk." "Hello, Richard. What exactly did you tell them?" "I'm sorry, who?" "You know who. Sarah, Tom, Jennifer. 17 senior executives resigned this morning. 17 Claire." Identical letters, all citing Friday night's incident as their reason for leaving. He paused. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing they didn't already know," I said calmly. "Your son publicly humiliated me in front of our entire company. They drew their own conclusions about what kind of leadership that represents. This is going to cripple us. We have major client presentations this week. The Meridian Tech renewal won't be happening," I interrupted gently. "Meridian has decided to take their business elsewhere." Silence. "Then you can't do this." "I didn't do anything, Richard. Your son fired me, remember?" "Effective immediately." "I'm simply overwhelmed by the complexity of my role." I let the words hang between us. "I'm surprised you approved his decision. You must have known how the executive team would react." "I didn't approve it," Richard said, and for the first time I heard genuine anger in his voice. "Marcus acted without board consultation. The decision to remove you should have gone through proper channels. Well, it didn't, and now you're dealing with the consequences." I paused, debating how much to reveal. "You should also know that Marcus is about to face some additional difficulties. Legal difficulties." "What are you talking about?" "I suggest you speak with your legal team. I believe they'll be receiving some interesting communications from federal investigators this morning." Another pause, longer this time. When Richard spoke again, his voice was careful. "Claire, if this is about the divorce, we can work something out. A fair settlement, mutual non-disclosure." "This isn't about the divorce," I said. "This is about systematic fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. And it's no longer in my hands, Richard. It's in the hands of the FBI." I heard him draw in a sharp breath. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Marcus has been stealing from Thornton Dynamics for 4 years. Over $70 million routed through shell companies and offshore accounts. And he forged my signature on documents to make it look like I was the one behind it." My voice remained steady, calm. "So when you ask what I told your executive team, the answer is, I told them the truth. And they made their own decisions about whether they wanted to stay at a company where the CEO is a criminal. These are serious allegations, Claire. You'd better have proof. I have 6 months of documented evidence compiled by a private investigator and forensic accountant. Voice recordings, financial documents, time-stamped photographs. Everything your son tried to hide, I found. Everything he tried to pin on me, I can prove I had nothing to do with." I softened my voice slightly. "Richard, I know you built this company from nothing. I know it's your legacy. But your son has been destroying it from the inside, and he was setting me up to take the fall. I'm sorry you're finding out this way, but I won't be destroyed to protect him." The line was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, "Where are you?" "That's no longer your concern. Claire, please, we can fix this. Whatever Marcus has done." "Goodbye, Richard. I hope you have a good attorney." I ended the call and immediately blocked his number. Then I called Elizabeth Patterson. Richard Thornton just called me, I said. He knows about the FBI investigation. Good, Elizabeth said crisply. Let him panic. How did he react? Tried to negotiate. Offered a settlement and mutual non-disclosure. Typical. He's trying to contain the damage before it becomes public. I heard papers rustling. Agent Coleman called me 15 minutes ago. She's reviewed the preliminary evidence and is escalating the investigation. She wants to meet with you this afternoon. My hands were shaking slightly. This was really happening. What time? 2 p.m. at the field office. I'll be there with you. Elizabeth's voice gentled. Claire, you did the right thing. You protected yourself and exposed a serious crime. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty about that. I don't feel guilty, I said. I feel terrified. That's normal. But you're not facing this alone. You have legal representation, you have evidence, and you have witnesses. Marcus is the one who should be terrified. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and let myself shake for exactly 5 minutes. Then I made tea, pulled myself together, and opened my laptop to review the Phoenix Strategic Partners business plan one more time. If I was going to rebuild my professional life from scratch, I needed to be ready. The FBI field office was exactly as institutional as I'd expected. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting, utilitarian furniture designed for function over comfort. Agent Sarah Coleman turned out to be a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of Elizabeth Patterson. She shook my hand firmly and gestured to a conference room where David Silverman, my forensic accountant, was already waiting. Miss Thornton, Agent Coleman said, settling into a chair across from me. I've reviewed the preliminary documentation your forensic accountant provided. It's substantial. Thank you for seeing me so quickly, I said. We take financial fraud seriously, especially when it involves the level of sophistication Mr. Silverman has. Documented. She opened a folder and pulled out several documents. Before we proceed, I need to understand your role in this. You were Director of Strategic Partnerships at Thornton Dynamics, correct? For 6 years, yes. And you had access to company financial systems? Limited access? I could view budgets for my department and track expenses related to partnership development, but I didn't have access to corporate accounting or high-level financial systems. But your signature appears on numerous documents related to shell companies and offshore transfers. My mouth went dry. Those signatures are forgeries. I never signed those documents. Never saw them until I began investigating irregularities 6 months ago. My husband created those entities without my knowledge and used my identity to shield himself. Agent Coleman studied me carefully. Walk me through your discovery process. When did you first suspect something was wrong? I spent the next hour detailing everything. The email I'd accidentally seen, the pattern of suspicious behavior, the decision to document rather than confront, the hiring of Patricia Chen and David Silverman, the 6 months of systematic evidence gathering. You never confronted your husband during this time? Agent Coleman asked. No, I wanted to understand the full scope before he knew I was aware. And I was terrified that if I confronted him, he'd destroy evidence and frame me more comprehensively. I met her eyes. Agent Coleman, my name is on dozens of fraudulent documents. If I hadn't spent 6 months compiling proof of forgery, I would be the obvious suspect. I think that was always his plan, use his trusting wife as the scapegoat, if anyone ever investigated. A narcissist playbook, Agent Coleman said, but not unkindly. Use someone close, someone who trusts you, and build your exit strategy into their identity. She turned to David Silverman. Your forensic analysis supports Miss Thornton's claims? David nodded. Completely. The signature analysis shows clear evidence of forgery, inconsistent pressure points, irregular letter formation, digital manipulation on scanned documents. Additionally, the timing of these fraudulent transactions consistently coincides with periods when Miss Thornton was documented to be out of the office or out of the country. The pattern is clear. Marcus Thornton waited until his wife was unavailable, then executed transactions using her forged signature. And the total amount embezzled? $73 million across 4 years, routed through 6 shell companies and 12 offshore accounts. The sophistication suggests either Mr. Thornton had expert help or has significant experience with financial fraud. Agent Coleman made notes. Miss Thornton, I need to ask, why did you wait 6 months to report this? Why not come forward immediately? Because I was scared, I said honestly. Scared I wouldn't be believed. Scared Marcus's family influence would bury the investigation. Scared I'd end up charged with crimes I didn't commit because my name was all over his documents. I paused. I needed time to build an airtight case. I needed evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. And I needed to wait until Marcus made a move that would show his true character. The public firing at the Gala. Yes. If I'd come forward before that, it would look like a bitter wife trying to destroy her husband. But after Friday night, after he humiliated me in front of 500 people, his credibility is damaged. People are questioning his judgment. And when the truth comes out, they'll understand why. Agent Coleman leaned back in her chair. I'll be honest with you, Miss Thornton, this is one of the most thoroughly documented cases I've seen from a civilian complainant. Most people come to us with suspicions and partial evidence. You're coming with 6 months of professionally compiled documentation, expert forensic analysis, and clear proof of identity theft. Does that mean you're opening an investigation? We've already opened a preliminary investigation as of this morning. Based on what I'm seeing now, I'll be recommending we escalate to a full criminal investigation by end of day. She met my eyes. This is substantial, Miss Thornton. Federal-level fraud with documented patterns spanning years. If everything checks out the way it appears to, your husband is looking at serious prison time. I felt something tight in my chest release. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This process is going to be difficult. We'll need to interview you multiple times. We'll need access to your personal communications and finances. We'll need you to testify before a grand jury and potentially at trial. Agent Coleman's expression softened slightly. And your husband will fight back. You'll have expensive lawyers and they'll try to paint you as a vindictive spouse lying for revenge. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing for that for 6 months, I said quietly. I'm ready. The news broke on Wednesday. I was in the warehouse space I'd leased for Phoenix Strategic Partners, meeting with Sarah and Jennifer to discuss office layout when Sarah's phone buzzed with an alert. She glanced at the screen and her eyes went wide. Claire, you need to see this. She turned her phone to show me a breaking news headline. FBI investigating CEO of Thornton Dynamics for embezzlement. Federal fraud charges expected. My hands started shaking. It was one thing to report crimes to federal investigators. It was another to see those crimes become national news. Jennifer pulled up the full article on her tablet and began reading aloud. Federal investigators have opened a criminal investigation into Marcus Thornton, CEO of Thornton Dynamics, following evidence of systematic embezzlement spanning multiple years. Sources close to the investigation indicate that Thornton allegedly created shell companies and offshore accounts to funnel over $70 million from the technology firm founded by his father. The FBI's white-collar crime unit is leading the investigation, and charges are expected to be filed within weeks. There's more, Sarah said, scrolling. The investigation was reportedly initiated following a detailed complaint from an unnamed corporate whistleblower who provided 6 months of documented evidence. Thornton Dynamics has experienced significant turmoil this week, with 17 senior executives resigning en masse following what witnesses describe as a controversial personnel decision by Marcus Thornton at the company's anniversary gala last Friday. They connected the resignations to the investigation, Jennifer noted. People are going to figure out you were the whistleblower. Let them, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I'm not hiding. My phone began ringing. I looked at the screen. Patricia Chun, my private investigator. Claire, have you seen the news? Patricia asked when I answered. Just saw it. Good, because Marcus knows it was you. He's trying to call you 17 attempts in the last hour. He also showed up at your old apartment. My stomach dropped. He what? Don't worry, you're not there. But your neighbor called me. You listed me as an emergency contact, remember? She said Marcus was pounding on the door for 15 minutes before building security escorted him out. He was agitated, possibly drunk. Jesus. It gets worse. He then went to Thornton Dynamics and apparently had a meltdown in his father's office. Security had to remove him from the building. Richard has placed him on immediate administrative leave pending the investigation. I felt a sick sort of satisfaction. His father fired him. In essence, yes. The board held an emergency meeting this morning. Richard is resuming CEO duties and Marcus is barred from company premises until the legal situation resolves. Patricia paused. Claire, I need you to be very careful. Marcus is unraveling, and desperate people do unpredictable things. Are you somewhere safe? I'm at the Phoenix office with Sarah and Jennifer. There are people around. Stay there. I'm sending a security consultant to assess your apartment and office. Until Marcus is formally arrested, I want you taking precautions. After I hung up, Sarah was watching me with concern. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said automatically. Then more honestly, I'm terrified. But I'm fine. Jennifer pulled up another article on her tablet. Listen to this one. Former colleagues of Marcus Thornton describe a pattern of aggressive behavior and financial irregularities. One anonymous executive who recently resigned from Thornton Dynamics stated, "This doesn't surprise anyone who worked closely with him. The only surprise is that it took this long to come to light. The press is tearing him apart," Sarah observed. "By tomorrow, everyone in the industry will know." Good, I said, and meant it. Let them know exactly who he is. My phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth Patterson. Judge granted restraining order. Marcus cannot contact you or come within 500 feet. Violation means immediate arrest. Call if you need anything. I showed the message to Sarah and Jennifer. Some of the tension left my shoulders. You really did prepare for everything, Jennifer said quietly. I had to, I replied. He was destroying me slowly, methodically, setting me up to take the fall for his crimes while publicly diminishing my competence. If I hadn't fought back, I'd either be in prison right now or so broken I couldn't function. I met both their eyes. I chose to fight. And I'm not apologizing for that. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. No one's asking you to. The formal indictment came 3 weeks later. Marcus Thornton was arrested at 6:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning at the luxury condo he moved into after I filed for divorce. Federal agents executed the arrest warrant with news cameras rolling. Per Agent Coleman's strategic decision to make the arrest as public as possible, a counter to the public humiliation Marcus had inflicted on me at the gala. I watched the coverage from my apartment, coffee in hand, feeling a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion. The footage showed Marcus being led out in handcuffs, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and sweatpants, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost at least 15 pounds in 3 weeks, and the confident CEO who'd stood at the podium firing me was nowhere in evidence. The news anchor's voice narrated, Marcus Thornton faces 15 counts of federal fraud, 7 counts of embezzlement, 12 counts of identity theft, and 3 counts of money laundering. If convicted on all counts, he faces up to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Federal prosecutors described this as one of the most extensive corporate fraud cases in recent years, with evidence compiled by a whistleblower who chose to remain anonymous during the investigation. I wasn't anonymous anymore. By that afternoon, industry publications had named me as the whistleblower, and my phone was ringing off the hook with interview requests, which I declined uniformly. The divorce proceedings moved quickly after the arrest. Marcus's assets were frozen, his legal team was scrambling to negotiate a plea deal, and Richard Thornton, devastated by his son's crimes, pushed for a rapid settlement to protect what remained of the company's reputation. 6 weeks after the gala, I sat in a conference room at Patterson and Associates while Elizabeth reviewed the final divorce settlement. $15 million, Elizabeth said, sliding the document across the table. Full dissolution of marriage. Acknowledgement that you were victim of identity theft and fraud. Public statement from Thornton Dynamics clearing your name. And Marcus waives all rights to contest or appeal. I stared at the number. $15 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. The criminal trial is scheduled for January, Elizabeth continued. Federal prosecutors are confident. They have your evidence, they have David's forensic analysis, they have testimony from former employees. Marcus's attorneys are trying to negotiate a plea, but the prosecutor's office isn't offering anything below 12 years. Good, I said quietly. Claire, you need to decide how you want to handle the publicity. Right now, you're the anonymous whistleblower. But when the trial starts, that anonymity disappears. The defense will likely try to paint you as a vindictive ex-wife. You need to be prepared for that. I'm ready, I said. I've been ready. Elizabeth studied me for a moment, then nodded. I believe you. Sign the settlement, and this chapter is officially closed. I picked up the pen and signed my name. Claire Thornton for the last time. The marriage was over. The investigation was complete. The evidence was with prosecutors. All that remained was watching Marcus face the consequences of his choices. Phoenix Strategic Partners officially launched 2 months after the gala. The warehouse space in the city's revitalized industrial district was unrecognizable from the empty shell I'd first leased. Sarah had designed an open-concept office with collaborative workspaces, private meeting rooms, and a kitchen that actually felt welcoming. Jennifer had hired a team of 12 talented professionals from across the industry. Marcus Rivera had built out our entire technology infrastructure. 17 executives from Thornton Dynamics had joined me, bringing their expertise, their client relationships, and their loyalty. We weren't just a startup, we were a team of seasoned professionals who'd chosen integrity over comfort. Principal over paycheck. Our client list grew quickly. Meridian Tech became our anchor client, followed by Cascade Industries, Brighton Systems, and 8 other companies who valued our reputation for ethical partnerships and strategic excellence. By month 3, we were valued at $50 million with projections for significant growth. I stood in my office, glass-walled, overlooking the main workspace, and watched my team in action. Sarah was presenting to a potential client. Jennifer was reviewing contracts with our legal team. David Kim was leading a strategy session with 4 junior associates. This was what I'd built from the ashes of my marriage. Not just a company, but a community of people who'd taken a risk on each other. My phone buzzed with a message from Elizabeth Patterson. Trial date set. January 15th. Prosecutor expects 6 to 8 week trial. You'll be called to testify week 2. I replied, I'll be ready. The criminal trial would be difficult. Marcus's defense attorneys would try every tactic to discredit me, to paint the evidence as manufactured, to claim I was a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge. But I had truth on my side, and documentation, and witness after witness who could corroborate every claim. I also had something else. Peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in fear. Wasn't walking on eggshells around someone who viewed me as inferior. Wasn't questioning my own competence because someone I loved constantly diminished me. I was building something genuinely mine, surrounded by people who respected me, doing work that mattered. A knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. Sarah stood in the doorway with a familiar expression, excitement mixed with slight disbelief. Claire, you need to see this. I followed her to the main conference room, where the entire team had gathered around the television. A news program was showing live coverage from Thornton Dynamics headquarters. What's happening? Richard Thornton is making a statement, Jennifer said. On screen, Richard stood at a podium, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. His hands gripped the edges of the podium as he spoke. Today, I'm announcing my resignation as chairman and CEO of Thornton Dynamics, effective immediately. Over the past months, my family has faced difficult truths about actions that violated not just laws, but the fundamental principles of integrity and trust that should guide any business. He paused, visibly struggling. My son Marcus has pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. He will serve 15 years in federal prison, and he has lost everything he worked to build, as he should. A murmur ran through my team. 15 years. Marcus had taken a plea deal. I also want to address the victims of my son's crimes, particularly Claire Thornton, who had the courage to expose systematic fraud while herself being positioned as a potential scapegoat. Miss Thornton acted with integrity, with evidence, and with a courage that I wish had been present within my own family. Richard's voice cracked slightly. Thornton Dynamics will be establishing a whistleblower protection fund in her name, and we are implementing comprehensive reforms to ensure this never happens again. The news anchor appeared on screen. This stunning development comes as Marcus Thornton accepted a plea deal this morning, avoiding trial, but accepting a 15-year federal prison sentence without possibility of parole. Sources indicate that the weight of evidence compiled by his ex-wife Claire Thornton made a successful defense virtually impossible. Sarah muted the television. The conference room was absolutely silent. 15 years, someone finally said. He took a plea to avoid a longer sentence, Jennifer observed. The prosecutor must have had him completely cornered. I felt an odd emptiness where I'd expected satisfaction. Marcus was going to prison. His father had resigned. Thornton Dynamics was in shambles. The man who'd publicly humiliated me and tried to destroy my life had lost everything. But I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired and sad and relieved it was finally over. Claire? Sarah said quietly. Are you okay? Yeah, I said, and realized it was true. I'm okay. He made his choices and now he's facing the consequences. That's not on me. You saved yourself, Tom Patterson said from the doorway. And in doing so, you probably saved other people he would have victimized next. That matters, I nodded, letting his words settle. Maybe he was right. Maybe by refusing to be destroyed, by fighting back with evidence and documentation instead of just walking away, I'd prevented Marcus from doing this to someone else. All right, I said, pulling myself together. We have work to do. Meridian presentation is tomorrow, and we need to finalize those partnership terms. The team dispersed back to their work, but Sarah lingered. You know, she said thoughtfully, when you walked out of that gala with your head held high, I thought you were putting on a brave face. I didn't realize you'd been planning your exit for months. I was terrified that night, I admitted. But I was also ready. I'd done the work. I'd built the evidence. I'd prepared my escape route. All Marcus did was give me the perfect public moment to execute everything I'd already set in motion. Strategic to the end, Sarah said with a small smile. That's why 17 of us followed you. Not because you were a victim, but because you were a fighter who'd already built a path forward. 3 months later, I received an unexpected visitor. Patricia Chun called ahead, she always did now since Marcus's arrest, to let me know that Richard Thornton had requested a meeting. I almost said no. What could he possibly have to say that mattered anymore? But curiosity won out, and I agreed to meet him at a neutral coffee shop downtown. Richard looked diminished in person, his expensive suit hanging on a frame that had lost weight, his face lined with exhaustion. He stood when I arrived, the gesture automatic and courteous. Claire, thank you for seeing me. I sat down across from him, coffee in hand, expression carefully neutral. Richard, I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to say this in person. He cleared his throat. I'm sorry, for everything, for not seeing what Marcus was doing. For not protecting you when I should have. For allowing you to be put in a position where you had to fight this battle alone. You didn't know, I said, though the words felt hollow. I should have known. I built that company from nothing. I knew every corner of it, every system, every process. I chose not to see what Marcus was becoming because he was my son, and I wanted to believe he was capable of leading. Richard's hands wrapped around his coffee cup. But the signs were there. The way he treated people. The financial irregularities Jennifer Wu tried to bring to my attention that I dismissed. The pattern of executives leaving under his management. I chose family loyalty over truth, and that choice nearly destroyed innocent people. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, to absolve him of guilt. But another part, the part that had spent 6 months documenting crimes while terrified for my future, couldn't quite forgive that easily. What Marcus did was his choice, I finally said. You didn't make him embezzle $70 million. You didn't make him forge my signature or set me up as a scapegoat. Those were his decisions. But I created the environment where he believed he could get away with it, where he felt entitled to treat people as disposable. Richard met my eyes. I'm stepping away from business entirely. Thornton Dynamics has been sold to Meridian Tech, who will absorb what remains of value. The proceeds are being used to repay creditors and compensate victims. Whatever is left, I'm donating to the Whistleblower Protection Fund we're establishing in your name. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. You saved yourself, Claire, but you also saved our company from complete destruction. If you'd waited even a few more months, if Marcus had gotten away with it long enough to pin everything on you, the whole company would have collapsed under criminal investigation. Hundreds of people would have lost their jobs, their pensions, their livelihoods. He paused. You exposed the cancer before it could kill the patient. That deserves recognition. I felt something tight in my chest loosen slightly. I wasn't trying to save Thornton Dynamics. I was trying to save myself. I know. But you did both. Richard pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. This is a personal apology letter, along with information about the Whistleblower Fund. I wanted you to have it directly from me. I took the envelope but didn't open it. How is Marcus? Richard's expression closed. He's in federal prison. He'll be there for the next 15 years. He writes to me occasionally. I don't respond. You've cut him off. I've accepted that the son I thought I raised doesn't exist. The man in prison who destroyed lives for personal gain. That's who Marcus really is. I can't change that, and I can't forgive it. His voice was heavy with grief. I visit the families of his other victims sometimes. There were 3 before you, women he dated, manipulated, and discarded. I offer what restitution I can. It's inadequate, but it's something. Other victims. The words settled over me like a cold weight. Marcus had done this before, to other women, and gotten away with it. I'm glad I fought back, I said quietly. I'm glad I didn't let him destroy me. So am I, Richard said. You're a remarkable woman, Claire. I wish I told you that when you were still part of our family. I wish I defended you when Marcus first started diminishing your work. I wish a lot of things. He stood, preparing to leave. I hope Phoenix Strategic Partners succeeds beyond your wildest dreams. You deserve that and more. After he left, I sat with the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter, Richard's apology written in detail, acknowledging specific failures and expressing genuine remorse. There was also information about the Whistleblower Protection Fund, $10 million endowed to support corporate whistleblowers with legal resources, financial assistance, and counseling services. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. Forgiveness would come eventually, maybe. But right now I just felt tired. 1 year after the gala, Phoenix Strategic Partners hosted its own anniversary celebration. The warehouse space was decorated with understated, elegant string lights, floral arrangements, a small jazz quartet playing in the corner. 50 employees, 20 clients, and a dozen venture capitalists mingled over champagne and orbs. The atmosphere was warm, celebratory, genuine. I stood near the bar in a simple black dress, watching the party unfold, when Sarah appeared at my elbow. Speech time, she said, grinning. I hate speeches. Too bad, you're the founder. It's traditional. I laughed and took the microphone Sarah handed me. The room gradually quieted as people turned their attention toward me. A year ago, I began, I walked out of a very different anniversary party. I'd just been publicly humiliated, fired in front of 500 people, dismissed as incompetent and overwhelmed. The room was absolutely silent. Everyone here knew the story. It had become industry legend. I walked out not knowing exactly what would happen next, but knowing I wouldn't accept being diminished. I'd spent 6 months preparing for the possibility that I'd need to leave, to start over, to build something entirely my own. I looked around at the faces watching me. What I didn't expect was that 17 incredibly talented people would choose to come with me. Applause rippled through the crowd. Sarah raised her glass. Phoenix Strategic Partners exists because a group of professionals decided that integrity matters more than comfort, that respect matters more than legacy, and that building something new is worth the risk of leaving something established. I smiled. We're not just a company. We're a community built on mutual trust, shared values, and the belief that business can be excellent without being cruel. More applause. I saw Jennifer wiping her eyes, Tom grinning broadly, Marcus Rivera nodding in agreement. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for believing in something that was just an idea a year ago. Thank you for making Phoenix Strategic Partners everything I hoped it could be. I raised my glass. To new beginnings! To new beginnings! The room echoed. As the party continued around me, I stepped outside onto the building's rooftop terrace. The city stretched out below, lights glittering in the darkness, full of possibility and life. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw a notification. Call from unknown number. I rejected it automatically, then checked my voicemail. One new message. Against my better judgment, I listened. Marcus's voice came through, distant and hollow. Claire, it's me. I know I'm not supposed to contact you. I know the restraining order, but I just... I wanted you to know I'm sorry. For everything. You didn't deserve what I did. You were right to fight back. You were right about everything. A long pause. I hope you're happy. I hope you built something good. You always were better than I gave you credit for. The message ended. I stood on the rooftop for a long moment, looking at my phone. Then I deleted the voicemail, blocked the number, and went back inside to the party.